Greetings. Just a quick sharing today. Just some simple, humble insight as someone who has lived through the experience of being in a cult. I'm not a teenager, so I have some bit of life experience, and so I'm a person that fortunately. Um, that I chose to leave a cult rather than stay and fit in as the promise of family and community and things that my mind and my heart desired were dangled in front of me. I chose to leave a cult because there were too many things that didn't add up. Um, Too many things that didn't make sense. There was quite a lack of transparency. Again, this is a not an entertainment channel. This is just some simple insight. And as I've observed, a lot of things are coming forward for Black people, but also for people to see clearly. They're just being exposed. And as I contemplate always, how was I vulnerable? What kinds of qualities was I ascribing to someone that I didn't know well enough yet because I had hopes and desires, molded what I wanted to see. And I'm really grateful to have had some life experience that allowed me to have a sense of myself and enough confidence to walk away from what was popular or the group or wanting to be in the group, to have enough self-confidence to leave the group. So technically, this channel has been reported and deleted um, because of my speaking out. So if folks would like to save the content, you're welcome to do so. I don't think, unfortunately, many people, because this is not the States, many people in the country I'm at now in Belize, I don't think even use YouTube as much. They're more so on Facebook. So I do from time to time see members of this particular cult as they come out to shop. And so something I just wanted to share today, some insight into some patterns are one, things that are hidden in plain sight. Manipulators, cult leaders, they'll tell you, just like in many religions, you're oohed and awed or you're wowed by universal truths. And so by telling you some things, a riddle or a puzzle of life, or some things you may not have the answers to, um, people will feel awestruck that this person has some unique information or has a way of comprehending information that they don't. And under the guise of universal truth, under the cover of universal truths, right? There are things that are hidden in plain sight. And so, what I mean by that, keeping in mind that there may be young people, young adults, or folks that may be considering joining a cult watching, is that a predator manipulator is going to tell you some things, maybe even sometimes tell you what they're going to do to you. So later you can say, well, they already told me. But the difference is you may not comprehend the context, right? Because you're not thinking like a manipulator. You don't have the same kind of experience as a cult leader or a manipulator or someone that has a whole nother agenda for your life. So they do understand that people can be controlled through inflicting trauma. People that have been that feel abandoned, that have been violated, abused, bullied, even if in school, um, beaten, sexually molested or mishandled. People that have been exposed to seeing things that are inappropriate at a certain age, whether that's sexually or abuse, who have been in foster homes, and any kind of combination of mishandling, particularly as a youth, or abuse, or having been cheated on or abandoned. These things are very traumatizing to people, in addition to collective societal trauma. You can see this in many cults. For example, if we look at police brutality, or on a global scale, the treatment of many chocolate folks the world over. When you inflict trauma onto someone, it is very easy to trigger them. And by triggers means that somebody, not in a logical sense, but psychologically as a reflex, people will go to defend themselves, protect themselves, to do anything to avoid further pain and further abuse. So that's triggering. So when someone is triggered and they're fearful, they'll do anything to protect themselves. So someone, a manipulator, if that's a company trying to sell you something, or if it's a con artist, or a cult leader trying to sell you something, they understand human psychology. And sometimes when I sit and I reason, and I just think about it. Two areas that I don't think we discuss as a collective with our children is human psychology on a basic level of how to get people to do things, or how people can manipulate you into doing something, whether that's getting a vote, getting your money, getting into your body sexually, getting into your pockets. Psychology and economics, understanding basic business. These are some things that would benefit us, or mature adults with some experience, to have these conversations with young people, young adults especially, and young people, teenagers, preteens. Somewhere this conversation is an important conversation to have around just basic psychology, understanding the mind, why we do what we do, what drives behavior, how your behavior can be manipulated, or how your own fears can actually drive you to do things. And when you're trying in such an effort to stay out of a situation, how you can isolate or be manipulated into the very situation that you're trying to avoid. So if there are young people watching this, hopefully this doesn't go over your heads. I'm making an effort to just be as simple and as plain as possible, so that folks can begin to just peep patterns and see patterns. Or even if you're younger and you haven't been in a certain situation yet, hopefully you can just remember some key points and some patterns and some things to look for. But it's very important for folks to understand how humans are manipulated through fear, or inflicting violence, or sexual violation, especially at a young age. These things trigger behaviors. And when you can be triggered, it's not logical. And I've observed, as there are many young people, this is not isolated to young adults. This can happen to mature women and single women too, or divorced women, that people that have been traumatized are easily manipulated. They can be manipulated by pastors, or fear of the afterlife, or fear of alone. Some of the basic human fears. It's very easy to get people to make decisions to release money, or release hold of the decision making out of fear, or feeling like, I'm so fearful, I'm not confident enough to make certain decisions on my own. So at a basic level, it's really important to have conversations on human psychology, nothing too lofty or esoteric, or too scholarly, just at a basic level, how we can be manipulated into certain behaviors, spending, putting ourselves in harm's way. This can be males and females. It may seem like it differs a little bit, but we can be manipulated into spending, open up our bodies, open up our minds, exposing ourselves to people who we don't know. And out of fear, for example, we can ascribe qualities, or we can project qualities from our wishes and our desires onto people that we don't know. So, for example, because of what I saw on the surface from this man, this leader of this particular cult, he appeared to be the image of a good father, and thinking that it was a safe space, and that they're into fruits and vegetables and these things. But in reality, I had not lived with this person and experienced enough of them or their character. So one of the other lures is, if you haven't met them personally, then you go off of the examples that are set, in this case, by other women. So there are ways that people are groomed into a cult. And one of the ways is also with sales, it works in human psychology, is testimonies. So the presence of other women that are there following behind the cult leader winds up becoming a testimony. So psychologically, you're thinking, if all of these intelligent women are there, there must be something to this man. You know, if there are this many, children or so on. Looking back, there are some distinctions, because one of the things I picked up on when I first visited was like, basically, where are all the men, right? The only man that was really there was the cult leader and his children, this tribe of 20 something. Now they have new anchor babies in there. And there was one other young man that was there, who was going through like a hazing, basically, to get in, from the States. And mind you, these people are from the States, with the exception of one, and now the new recruits from Belize. So, I'm just really understanding that people in their own personal lives, or their fears of feeling alone, are easily manipulated into cults. And when somebody can give enough language and rhetoric to trigger, you to get the head nod, and, that's true, hit with some universal truths, you'll start to psychologically ascribe, well, this person is a father, they're a good listener. You'll ascribe qualities to a person that you do not know, and that has not been vetted through your personal experience, because of what they appear to be. And someone's outward appearance is not necessarily a good enough vouch for their character. So another observation is that for folks that are in the cult, and I don't know that any of the parents of any of the folks that are currently in the cult, because they're young adults, if they've just written them off, if they should ever see this video. But it has occurred that people that are outside the cult, and they have children or young adults in the cult, to a certain degree, many of them, particularly women, are in the cult too. And I'll explain what I mean. Folks, a mother's first instinct is to make sure that her children are all right. A mother is going to be traumatized by the thought of anything happening to her children. Usually a male will want to just tear everything up when it comes to their offspring, or their children. But the interesting thing, a pattern and a distinction, is that initially, for folks from the outside, the parents, particularly mothers, don't want their children into the cult, and have said so. Get out of my child's head, and so on. But what they do, the young person is held in or kept in isolation. We don't want to say technically held, but psychologically they're held and they're manipulated. I can think in this case of where a couple of the cult members that now the newest recruits from Belize have anchor babies, where they wanted to leave. But they're in an isolated environment. And inside of an isolated environment, certain things are drilled into your mind every day, all day. And your food is controlled. Your books and your reading, all your material is controlled and monitored. And so you have a context, you can even hear, for example, cult members, and this is different cults, but a distinct pattern saying, well, I needed to have my brain washed. So there's a game of semantics that's played to rationalize things, where eventually the person's common sense is uprooted and dismantled. The person's ability to think for themselves. Again, because the universal truths are mixed in with a lot of manipulation. Initially, the parents don't really know what's going on inside of the cult. If they ask questions, they'll be told it's none of their business. Or during the hazing or the breaking in phase, they're kept apart from their children. So their parents have no idea of what is going on. And particularly if they are of legal age, keeping in mind legal age is different from country to country. And usually legal age goes by consensual sex, which varies from country to country, continent to continent, and also the age at which young people can smoke and drink. That's different culturally. So many people will think, well, my child is grown now, right? They'll use that. It seems like a rational explanation. At the same time, folks, and particularly the mothers, know something is off. They know something is off. None of their questions are answered. They're told it's none of your business. They're a grown person. They can make their own decisions, and they can feel themselves losing their child bit by bit. So part of the trauma that's inflicted is the mother becomes very panicked, and she just wants, at some point, she just resolves, well, the young person, they're old enough, they're a young adult, and I just want them to be safe. But she can tell just by the questions and the secrecy and the lack of transparency that she's losing her child. So what's interesting, if we fast forward, is the person that's outside of the cult, or the mother, the parent that's outside of the cult, and was up in arms and totally against it, initially concedes to the cult leader, which is why I say that, I realize the person on the outside is kind of in the cult too. The cult leader is very crafty, not to be underestimated at all. It is a gross error to underestimate a manipulator. It is a gross error to think they're stupid. They are extremely brilliant at manipulating humans and understanding human behavior. So the person that was so against it initially, and I'm going to point out, I'm going to give an example. Why is it, I'm thinking of this cult, and this guy's very crafty. He's always in survival mode, and he has to move at such a pace, and he'll use his own children. He'll use anybody. He'll use your talents, your skills, anything. The image should give him credibility, because on his own, people could care less about him. He's very charismatic and has quite a gift of gab, as do most manipulators. But folks could care less about him. But things are going to fly over the radar, and the subtleties, the nuances of the senses of something is off. People will easily get deflected or distracted. So why is it that initially, and I'm thinking of the young folks, but the young adults, but this could be anybody in the cult, why is it that you're not allowed to carry a camera or to keep a phone, or eventually you're cut off from all your family members, and only after you're thoroughly broken in? Did it ever occur to anyone, why would anytime they go around, they have to videotape your interactions with your parents, right? And I've been behind the scenes because I lived in the cult, and I would listen to what was said about the parents of the people now that have anchor babies in the cult. And I'm just sharing this just for insight. I'm not going to mention their names. I don't know if their parents will ever see this, but this is some kind of insight. But I think it misses people's heads, or goes over folks' heads, that why all of your simple interactions, all of a sudden, would they have to constantly videotape themselves helping your parents to put some plants in? I'm on the other side. I can see, because I live over here. Why would they have to videotape you hugging your mom? And so everything is with a video camera. This is because you're not allowed to videotape, but they videotape every interaction for documentation, for credibility. It doesn't make sense, that every time you do any kind of interaction, even the man that died, who they have built the pyramid on his land, that they moved at such a pace to secure the land before this man was sick and dying. And so certain interactions they videotape. So when you're coming, you're not allowed to bring any phones, any computers, anything like that. They tell you initially so that those things are not around their children. But later on, you see their children do use the computer and so on. And basically, it hits you not until later, after you're done being so awed by the natural environment, that basically you've been cut off from communication, and your means of expressing yourself and of cross-referencing have been cut off. So it's something that, when you sit back and you really reason, it's like there's so much that goes over people's heads. Sometimes I just wonder if people will connect the dots, but there's so much happening, and there's so much distraction. And if people have another frame of reference, there's just a lot that people cannot see on the computer. But I can tell you this, if we just stop and just reason, a lot of times these people that we're defending, and I see this is males and females, this thing with a father figure and ascribing these qualities to someone who you don't know. Again, Jim Jones used basketball, this is not a joke, to draw and lure in young people. And so this man has to find mates for his daughters. The young people that they're using with basketball to bring in here, They wouldn't want anything to do with this man who is technically blind, who is legally blind. um, doesn't communicate unless he has, well, he can communicate and talk. He's very brilliant, but always has to have one of his right hand mates around him. So he has to use a local person that speaks the language here in terms of Creole, which is spoken over here, the local patois, in order to gain access into that community. Again, these are things that will fly right over the average person's head because it looks like this person is doing. We want to see somebody doing good things, to eat fruits and vegetables and playing basketball, but he has a whole nother agenda. And I know it doesn't sound nice to have to say these things, but it's real. Again, another young woman that's in there that's from this country. If her mother was looking to secure her and keep her safe, and this man is in his 70s, and she came in at 16, isn't that like, why would she be one of his mates? It's just like, actually, when I think about it, it turns my stomach. And if you're not around long enough and you're not inside and everything is kept in secrecy, there's so much secrecy that people wouldn't know what questions to ask. And any questions that you ask are met with rhetoric. The other thing is, for example, all these nuances. In Central America, fruits and vegetables are very inexpensive. Black-eyed peas and plantains and certain things. Coconuts are inexpensive. I can get like 25 bananas, for example, for like $1. $1 US. Black-eyed peas are super duper inexpensive. If anything, meats and other things are more expensive. So to eat unprocessed foods is very, very inexpensive, especially if you're having them where I'm living. That's healthy food. There's nothing wrong with that. But when, for example, and this is it's so horrible. It's so horrible. But again, the point of this video is you can hide things in plain sight. So this man knows that he's been exposed. Again, this channel is technically deleted, so you can come back tomorrow and it might not be here. But if they're rushing to sell vegetables, right? So if they're selling vegetables and they're using the young people here, the 1 or 2 new recruits that have had anchor babies, to sell vegetables, and then they videotape it. So they videotape the young adults here that are married into the cult selling vegetables. So to people outside in the States, it looks like they're having interactions with the folks here. Greens, most people here are not really into vegetables. And if they do eat vegetables, they'll eat chaya, which is usually cooked. They don't really have a palate for vegetables. And from the way he always complained about the gas, and gas is one of the things that is expensive here. The gas would cost more than the vegetables. For example, you have your time tree if you're growing lots of vegetables, but then they had to pay gas to pump the water to the farming area. And it's actually very expensive. I was surprised that they didn't have solar, but it's a very expensive process because they're running off of gas generators. And then for the things they didn't grow, they would go to the market on a regular basis. So I don't know if this makes sense, but these are things that you wouldn't see. So my point is, certain things are done on camera. They constantly are videotaping certain things. And the point being to lend credibility to this person. Because if folks start to pick up on, even they're bringing folks in under the guise, young people, young men in particular right now, young men, in order to marry his daughters or to mate his daughters, and knowing that these people have land and other things, or they definitely look for people who may not have the support of their parents, or who are quote unquote poor, who will be so grateful, right? The thing is to also make you feel so grateful that you owe your life to the so-called high so-and-so, whatever his title is, the Messiah or Solar Messiah, but to make you feel grateful that you owe your life to this person. Everything will be videotaped. Basically, these folks coming in, guys looking for basketball, they're using 1 or 2 local basketball stars. The whole point is to lend credibility. But what's not going to be talked about is this man in his 70s with a young woman that came in at 16, and how the other women are grooming. So again, there are things that would be wonderful if it wasn't for the manipulation. And again, it's a universal truth, right? Fruits, vegetables, communities, that's not the issue. But the issue is the manipulation, the lack of transparency, also the using of women, more mature women, let's say in their 30s and their 40s, to use their assets and their resources to fund one egomaniac's his agenda. because the concern, which I don't think that parents of these young people will even consider, these young people, their parents would not even consider what this man's agenda is. The basketball and the fruits and vegetables seem so harmless, but once you're inside the cult, the absolute amount of control, there's no way that this man can maintain his control without grooming some people underneath him to manipulate the young people that are in there. Because once you're inside the cult after the initial basketball and stuff, you have to go through the hazing process once you're in there. And so the next recruit or cult member is going to walk the next person through it, because it's like sensory deprivation. Basically, you're out in isolation. You're not expecting to just eat black eyed peas with coconut oil. Sometimes not even sprouted correctly. You know what I'm saying? They'll give you a plate of food. The food looks great. By the time I left, I was getting slop. They could care less. But the goal is for people to come in who are challenged economically or don't really have parents around them or of a certain age where they can say that they're legal. They have no idea of what they're walking into if they think they're just coming for basketball. So I hope this makes sense. Again, it doesn't feel good, but at this point, there's no time or position to pretend that what's being seen is not being seen. That's part of the Jedi mind trick. Manipulators hide things in plain sight. Even under the guise of semantics, they're telling you what they're going to do to you. For example, as some of the, and it's only a couple of them, maybe 3 Belizean young people that have had 2 that have had children. The other one, I don't know if she's had a child yet, by this much older man, 40 something, or maybe almost 50 years older than her. But I don't know that, there's no way that her mom could know what she had in store. But anyway, he said to the mother on one of the rare visits that they were allowed to come in. This is one of the key points. He said to the mother, he said, I got this one. I'm going to get the rest of your children too. So he said it in a joking manner. And I'm thinking, like, they don't even realize this man is not joking. This man is not, he's telling you to your face, he's going to come for the rest of your children too. So a lot of times you don't take it seriously. For example, I could care less if he had 4 mates. I didn't see that as necessarily a negative thing if all the women were happy or, and healthy, and, sex is not the priority for every, woman. But as I stayed in there longer, into the second year, and as he got more comfortable and as he got more cocky, and as I saw a behavior that he exhibited towards his mates, and then the constant play for money when money was already being given to him, and how he dealt with people around money, people coming and then disappearing. There were so many things that didn't add up. And the more that I asked questions, the more problematic it became. So again, we have a tendency to ascribe qualities of what we want to see to a person that is not actually showing those qualities and that you don't know. So, folks want a ideal father would be the father that played basketball with you and encouraged you and you can go to about all your problems, and this is, these are now older adults in terms of chronologically, but a lot of us, many of us, something is lacking. And so the cult leader shows up as that person where you're in your 20s or 25, you don't have somebody to speak to. I'll be your father. I'll be your father figure. Certain things happen to you. You can confide all of that in me. So he's scanning each and every young person, in particular young males there, for to find mates for his children and to position himself strategically. So people's insecurities are definitely capitalized inside a cult. The cult member, cult leader is going to capitalize it. Again, the parents, even though they may seem like they're on the outside, particularly mothers are basically slowly don't even realize it. They're in the cult because they're basically in protecting their child that's in the cult. They're actually protecting the cult leader. So I would say that the cult leader uses women and children as like a sort of a shield to hide behind, because a woman is not going to, by nature, attack another woman or a child. The natural instinct, the reflex is to protect women and children. So when he incites something or manipulates something, he hides behind the women and the children, puts the children out front. So you look at the image of these children and talks about the next generation. So you'll overlook and stop asking questions, or you'll be appeased, or forget about the question that you asked that was just answered with rhetoric. Again, I hear African culture and all of that stuff, but at this point, with some life experience, I'm sorry, there's no way you can tell me the justification for somebody in their 70s with their own so many different issues, physically and so on, to be with a young woman, 16, 17. I'm sorry. And that's not what she came in there for. Sorry. And there was so many different things that didn't add up that eventually, that's why I was like, it was time to bounce. And then it's just something to reckon with when folks are, and this is something for us as a community to look at. And again, more things are continually coming forward, not just with this cult leader, but there's just distinct patterns of misuse and abuse coming forward. And hopefully folks are starting to connect the dots of when this is not about being a prude, or not say that we're not sexual beings, because sometimes that is used as a scapegoat to justify all kinds of behaviors. When young people are mishandled sexually, it's like a form of spiritual rape. It really tampers with the person's whole perspective. Cult leaders, knowing that this goes on all the time, are supposedly saving women from themselves or from the abuse that they've gone through, or to stroke the young male's ego to make sure that you get somebody, a young woman, a vegan virgin, and she won't give you any problems. But they're just not banking on the control. Basically, your insecurities, or people that have been, who are either for males that are lacking in confidence within themselves, that don't feel very confident, maybe because of where they feel they are, if they base their worthiness on their economic situation. If they're not established yet, if they're questioning their manhood, all these insecurities are manipulated by a cult leader. Yeah, basically. And it's something that the average person doesn't see coming, because we want this, and it's understandable. It's understandable. But the cult leader is going to scan you to find out what your trauma is so that you can be triggered. He can't be prosecuted for sleeping with a minor. Well, it's really a matter of who will come forward to say something. All of the members of the cult, they're not going to say anything. And the parents of the young adults that are there, who are now in their 20s, now they have babies there, so they're anchored in. And so if you were to watch any of the videos, what you constantly see is that, they're being treated like a king. They're constantly being fed, and the woman's constantly feeding them in their mouth and stroking them. Basically, it's like, and I know this sounds hard, but they're just whooped. And there's nothing wrong with relationships where we dote on each other. But it's the manipulation part. It's like, cult leaders and manipulators have children too. And this is age old, where people can use their daughters as like, as a lure to other young men. Particularly when people compare that situation to what they see going on out there, many people will willingly give their lives over to the cult because they think it's easier. They think, well, it has to be a lot better. It has to be a lot better than what's going on out here. The food is better. They're eating vegan. The hair is natural. It looks like when you compare the two, like some quote unquote lesser of the evils, or you think there's nothing wrong here. But there are many patterns that they can't see, and things they hadn't bargained on. People are not aware of. They're going to go into isolation. You just don't have a clue because it looks so positive from the outside. It's no different than churches, or there's other cults that are here all the time. And it's interesting, the different ethnic groups that are in there. When you see, one of the cults I can think in particular, when I see a Black person sprout up, I'm like, wow, where did they import this one from? So cults are very, very common. I always encourage people to go through the playlist on this channel of Black cults, white cults. There are even cults, corporate cults. There are several corporate cults that are catered, cults, I'm not joking, cults that are catered to doctors, lawyers, and CEOs. So it's much more prevalent in society than people realize. And then I do want to make mention of quite often is I don't like to be so vocal about where I'm living. Not that I'm in hiding, but what some people don't realize that our safety is of the utmost priority. I'm not interested in being a martyr for many people that are just asking questions, sometimes harmlessly. Some people merely want to be entertained. But the reality is, at the end of the day, when I'm off of this computer, most people won't check for our safety because people are just going on about their own lives. So we have to be very, very careful with our safety, basically, because there's it's unfortunate. Sometimes it turns my stomach, and I'm very, very sensitive, and I have to understand myself because it's like sometimes I have to stop and acknowledge this is Black women. Sometimes we don't, and as a people, but as Black women, we don't acknowledge like that's a lot to go through. It's already enough that we go through on an everyday basis in the United States. But to have to be constantly be concerned about your safety, I wouldn't expect that from cultural folks or folks with red, black, and green and locks. So the romanticism is not working. And thank you. That's much appreciated. And I'm not trying to be funny. I'm so appreciative. But I would definitely say at this, folks, at this point on the via the Greco-Roman calendar, 2019, we need more than prayer. Because right now, when I turn this off, I have a machete here, and I'm the most peaceful, don't mess with nobody, fruit and vegetable loving person. But the reality is, security is a fact of life. And when people talk about stepping outside of the United States, there's some things that we take for granted in the United States in terms of literacy, just people that skill to read and write. Um, the access to resources. Every environment is going to give you some plants that you can grow and that you can eat. Every environment has their pros, hmm has their advantages, and has different things that they offer you. So there are lots of benefits to being in the United States. I don't care for the cold, but every place is a trade-off. Even the small garden that I have is a lot of work. I don't mind it at all. It's a plus, and it's hot. It's warm here. It's probably like 99 and we're going up to 105 degrees. I don't mind the heat. I'll take the heat over the cold. But it's easy for us to get into the romantic part of relocating. It's a different culture. It's a different economy. I so encourage people to just get educated, because a lot of times, when I watch, sometimes I can't, because I have other work to do. I can't stay on the computer all day. But as I watch folks share videos of the tropics, it has become I've observed that a lot of us don't get out. So it's when you go into an environment that you're totally new. The people, and I've shared this before, the people that are already there are aware that you're not aware, that you're not stupid, but you're ignorant of the seasons, of the fruit, of the prices. You can tell you can tell by the questions that people ask. For example, I've said numerous times, people will come on some of the videos that I did before and say, how much is it? One of the first questions, how much is an acre of land? If you come here and you say that, you're going to get scammed. I'm not saying this to be funny, because of your priorities and not taking the time to do your research and understand. If you're just trying to get something cheap, you're going to wind up getting scammed. Not that you can't do that, but there's a process for everything. The cult leader knows this. In cutting off or being very monitoring very tightly your communications with the outside. They know, for example, that you won't be able, we were prevented from going out to check and to look for land. When we initially came, we had enough money to purchase land, if things didn't work out with these folks. So we had enough money from savings, from regular working folks, not rich by any means, regular working folks that people underestimate how we spend our time and our resources, spending on hair and nails and all those things weren't priorities. We did that already, so people underestimate that, just savings. If anything, we want to create relationships with folks, but just loose relationships is very important to have healthy boundaries and not be so much in a fantasy and be so over eager that we ascribe qualities to people we haven't lived with and we don't know. So it's important to have very clear agreements and openly discuss consequences or the exit plan or the end of the relationship if it doesn't work out, so that each party can walk away respectfully. Because ideally, It may not be a lot to other people, but just to give us our money back for what we paid for land. We didn't go there asking for a free ride. We're working adults with savings, and that's one of the things that I'm very grateful for, that life experience. Although it's challenging, but we were working adults. We didn't go on a free ride to just go sit and just be black hippies. Some of us still have land as well. Blessings. There's opportunities for relationships, but even with each other, I encourage us to have healthy. It's very healthy to have boundaries with people and clear agreements, and to be clear on, just be clear in agreements in terms of monetarily, living arrangements, how you resolve conflict, savings, contracts, whose name, these are things that we're uncomfortable because you feel like it's a brother or sister, somebody black. We don't like to have uncomfortable conversations. Quite often we get triggered. Somebody, oh, you don't trust me, or I was told I should just trust the leader of the cult. And I'm like, I can trust you to a point. Trust is something that naturally has to be earned. Again, that was another tremendous flag when somebody was a conflict of interest is telling me just to give trust to someone. I'm like, that's not even natural. There's so many red flags. So it's very easy for us to want to look at the fruits and vegetables in red, gold, and green, and like, wow, this person is really doing it. You don't know people and you don't know their character and agreements and so on, and how they're dealing with, I'm sorry. I'm not gonna say I'm sorry, but I'm like, the way I saw this man speaking to his mates, and then the big question mark with young women that he dealt with, that I learned more about as I spoke my truth. It's not that much fruits and vegetables in the world. There's not that much basketball in the world. But again, everybody's so enamored with basketball or not being fat. If you control somebody's food and just get them black eyed peas and some peanuts and, keep the calories low, it's all fresh food, but the person, their health is going to improve. And it's a warm climate. If, it's going to improve. That's not the problem. It's the manipulation. And it's not to be, it's not to be underestimated. Yeah, and it's like I caution folks to not get so caught up in the esoteric that we lose sight of things that are very practical. Again, you can get so caught up in someone's rhetoric that we don't need no contract, or somebody that you just met. You're going home with them, or it can be very dangerous. This is not the United States. The police system is not the same. People are not researching the political climate of where they're going. People don't know the money, backup plans. People don't even check to see if their phone works in another country. There's so many basics that, especially young people, and I get it. I was in my 20s at one time. I get it. So much trying to rebel against one thing or rebel against their parents or the system, that you don't see that you're rebelling against this, and you're going from this right into a different version of the same thing, but it's coming in a form that you like, if that makes sense. We can be manipulated by our preferences because you prefer natural hair and you prefer no makeup and you prefer something natural, that we don't take the time to look at somebody's character, just acknowledge you have not lived with this person. All the people that are in the cult, you don't know how they came to be there, and you haven't cross-referenced with people. Everything you could go now, you can cross-reference things online, not just a quick check. But there are a lot of things that are not going to show up online, and people to cross-reference people's character is very, very important, and to have agreements. Be very wary of somebody that's, when you ask questions, that gets upset when you ask questions or doesn't answer things directly. So these are some of the patterns that people won't see. And I would say definitely as Black folks, a lot of times it sounds hard. We really don't want to see. You just don't. It's almost like we're hanging on to these last bit. These are the leaders that are going to lead us through. You just don't want to believe that they could do something foul. You just don't want to believe it. And so there's deviancy in all communities, and it comes in all colors, even in our community. And to romanticize and pretend that you're not seeing what you're seeing doesn't serve us. When folks are mishandled as children, a lot of times everybody's doing something for a reason. Children will teach you that. No one does something without a reason. So when you see folks on drugs and alcohol, a lot of times within our community, they've been traumatized. And I'm not knocking anyone that smokes weed or ganja, whatever it is that people do. I'm not here to condemn anyone, but we have to question and ask ourselves honestly: is everyone really looking to get high just for pain relief, or is it more so the emotional and mental pain that we're trying to get away from a economic situation or loneliness, or we just want to zone out, and then just not wanting to be present and responsible and deal with the responsibility, even if it was in ignorance, for decisions that we've made, and think we could just hand it over to, no offense to Jesus, or you swap Jesus for the cult leader. You think you're just going to hand it all over to the cult leader, and they'll tell you, don't worry about it, I got you. But people are just not banking on the bill at the end. What's the bill that they will have to be paid? And once folks get into a cult situation, it's it's a groupthink situation. It's this thing. It's palpable, but it's, you have the children who are born into the cult to no fault of their own, but it's this thing where everybody's around and nobody will speak up. Like, you'll wonder, like, how come nobody speaks up around here? Why does nobody speak? Like, that is something, and you have a sense that it will be revealed in time. But as I said before, when I watch grown adults asking the soothsayer leader, what should I say? Like, they can't think for themselves as grown adults. There was so many red flags. And if I had not, like, us go through certain things to be light and leaders in the truth, I really encourage everyone, be your own leader. At this point, we'll all, let's lead together, because we all have qualities and strengths and life experience. At this point, protection, who doesn't want protection? But I resolve with, I will have to protect myself, because, your brothers, your sons, other people may not always be there. And the quote unquote God, if it's a male God that you're worshiping, or a female God, may not be there to physically defend you while you're living on this, in this dimension, on this earth plane. So quite often nobody's coming to save you, and the cult leader knows nobody's coming to check for you, because they feel like, you're in your 20s, you should know better by now, or that nobody really cares. So there's just another insight, a simple insight that I can just say from having lived inside one, and I'm nowhere near a dummy. But I just give thanks that I had enough wherewithal to get up and leave something that seems so positive, because in your mind is thinking, well, if you keep holding on a little longer, maybe it will change. And they keep dangling the carrot of, as the quote unquote, one of his head mates said to me, he's treating you like one of his mates, the so-called Queen Mother. We have this thing, we want African culture. It's a continent. We have deviancy in African culture. And, we're Afro people initially from the States, with Caribbean and Haitian, all kinds of other backgrounds. But it's people. It's people. Human beings are capable of deviancy. The romanticism isn't serving us. It can blind us. False prophets is real. And so warning comes before the destruction. You always have to be mindful of false leaders and false prophets. The thing is, sometimes young people, you don't know that they're false, and then it's something I say, like, early on, we can be very arrogant in our ignorance. And part of it is because you're so trying to fight against the establishment, or to fight against the system, or the white man, or whoever abused you, that you don't realize that you're being manipulated by someone else. So you're trading off one thing for another. For example, with this particular cult leader, towards a certain point where he had things, he wanted to make certain moves, and we still weren't 100% comfortable. And it was coming time for us to get to a certain stage of initiation, to surrender our bank accounts, and people were starting to disappear. A family that had come down, and then they disappeared, and no explanation, just all kind of just off stuff. And so the pitting of people against each other is common in the cult. People vie to be the number one student, or they compete against each other for the most praise, or they hang on when the cult leader gives more praise to one person than another. So, for example, one of the times where, another family had disappeared, and the quote unquote Queen Mother was told to take us, my sister and I, for a walk through the garden, because they know we love the garden, to take us to a garden, because the so-and-so high so-and-so soothsayer, priest, earth, solar, messiah, supposedly wanted us to relax, before we bring us into a meeting. And said, he has plans for you. The other family, they weren't patient enough. but he has plans and you're going to be a part of those plans. This was what she said. She said, but in perfect English, because she's the only one that was born. She's been with him for years, but has been born somewhere else. She said, but first we need you to get up off of that cash. So he had become very crass in his speaking to us. So he used her because we had a tremendous amount of respect for her as a quote unquote queen mother, and used her to come at us through another angle. So we're thinking, okay, we're not going to give him our bank account, but we'll give it to you because we trust you. You know, these are these insights that people may not pick up on because you don't have a frame of reference, especially young people. You don't have a frame of reference. And again, people are so badly trying to escape one thing, they don't realize they're trading it off for the same thing in a different form or another flavor of the same kind of manipulation. The problem is people still being deceived because they don't want to trust the Most High. They trust man. Spiritual journey is not a flesh journey. Well, you know what? I have to say honestly, at this point, when many people say the Most High, they say God, everybody does not mean the same thing. And so at this point, I've gotten to a point because the cult leaders telling you a lot of universal truths. All religion, they're telling you universal truths, but you don't bank on the manipulation. Religions and cults, they've all been used to manipulate people for forever, and it shows no sign of stopping. So I've whittled certain things down to a simple, to make it simple, to make it simple. So I turned on the volume. Anybody could say God, Most High, religion, locks, onks, bindies on the head, you know, rings on every finger, or look like they're ascetic and taking vows of chastity. I'm going to look at the behavior, and I realize I need to see the behavior over time because nice, just because somebody has manners, that's just social habits. That's not necessarily giving me It's not necessarily an indicator of their character. So I don't have a preference, and I look to be very aware of my own preferences for things coming to me in a flavor that I like. If I like the language of the Most High, if I like somebody's explanation, if I turn down the volume, it's very important for me to look at the behavior and how somebody treats themselves, how they treat children, how they treat the quote unquote help, how they treat people when nobody's looking, their character. Those things are going to say more to me than the person's behavior. And I also can recognize that I have to see that over time. So even if I liked somebody, quote unquote, liked or had a preference, or their behavior appeals to me, what we call liking someone, I don't know them well enough. I don't well them well enough. For people trying to meet people online, you can't sense the nuances. You don't see them in challenging situations when you don't agree with them, or when resources are tight, or when somebody says something that you don't like. You can't see people's natural reactions if you haven't cross-referenced their character. So once again, it's true. I say the Most High is the creator of all things. I get where you're going. Yeah. Faith without works, which comes back to common sense. So somebody telling me to trust somebody or trust in the Most High, and this is what can be very confusing to young people because they inherit a language from us. You know, my family was very much in the church, and then when I left high school, eventually I was exposed to all kinds of. Looking back was a blessing. I got exposed to. It was no conscious community back then, but cultural communities. I have Caribbean family. Eventually, you know, I experienced a nation for a short stint, and then I remember at some point to go get an X. I just didn't want to. I didn't want an X on the back of my name. You know, I just didn't feel I needed to get an X. But when we want to fit in and we're looking for something, it's very easy to get sucked into different camps. And so I don't feel at this point I don't need a book to tell me how to treat people. Um, I feel confident, and I was an avid reader. I could tell you, I spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on books and courses and things over the years. But I feel very confident in my common sense and sit with my ability to be discerning. I don't know everything, and I'm humble enough to know you can still get got, right? Because a lot of times we're not making decisions logically. We're making decisions quite often based on triggers and emotions. So I'm humble enough to know that. But I feel very confident. I don't need a book to tell me, or a set of rules or somebody's interpretations to tell me what health looks like, and just treatment of other people, other beings, and other creatures. So I keep it really simple. I'm talking real believers of the Most High for me. I'm talking from my journey. Yeah, well, you know your journey and your behavior, all of that. It's gonna play out. It shows. It's gonna show up on its own. So I'm definitely one at this point for giving myself enough, respecting myself enough to give myself enough time to get to know me and to get to know other people before I just jumped on or cling on to someone, even if I like what they're saying or I like their lingo or they seem like they're nice. You know, part of it's just a readjustment because I really got taken to school. I got taken to school. This cat gave me a PhD. You know what I'm saying? PhD. And I have to reason with it, you know, a whole nother level of a lesson that I had not bargained for. Experience bring wisdom. Yep, definitely, definitely. And so, this is just a humble sharing. And again, I just come back to things are hidden in plain sight. Sometimes a predator, someone is telling you what they're going to do to you. It's slid in. It's slid in. You know, this person said to this one person's mother, "I got this one. I'm gonna get the rest of your kids too," and said it with a ha ha ha. And sometimes we overlook things because they're said in a joking manner. And quite often, even in our entertainment, we're laughing at a lot of things that aren't funny. It's very common to laugh at Black women's pain or us doing the dozens. That's what they say back in the days, in the old days, or um, hurtfully speaking to each other, you know, and making jokes out of it. You know, we become so desensitized that a lot of stuff goes right over our head. You know, like our pain and our suffering is funny to the point now where if people speak out up against their abuse, we tell people they should have got over it, or how come you didn't come forward years ago? It's like we've become so desensitized. It's like um, it's actually shocking. If we weren't so numb, I think many of us would be shocked. Hmm. Yeah, and finding the peace. Yep, definitely. And it's definitely something. So I think we run, or I've observed, we run away so much from emotional pain and feelings, which a cult leader will take full advantage of. They'll be your ear. They'll be your father or your daddy. You know, one time he told me, "You need a daddy." I'm thinking like I'm a grown woman. I'm a grown adult woman. It's not that I have affection, I always want to hear, but it just some of the things that would come out of this person's mouth, I was in shock. Again, had I not been in that long and had he not gotten comfortable and cocky, these are things I would have never heard, you know, from inside the cult. And so when I look at other people vouching for this man's character, you know, he's a basketball coach. You know, he seems like he's positive, but there's no way these people would even mess with this man if he didn't use the locals here as a point of entry to give him credibility. You know, so the victim story. Well, I'm choosing every day. I realize, a lot of things we're affected by it. You know, I don't have to stay there, but I think it's okay to acknowledge that you're affected by things. Yeah, that was strong, strong, strong. But there's strength even in acknowledging vulnerability. It doesn't make you any stupid. Just like I say, I don't have regrets for my intention and giving and money and resources, my intention. But I got taken to school because everyone's not thinking um, like you are. And reality in the jungle and life and nature, predators exist, and we need not be nice and give pleasantries to predators or to molesters or people that, because those are not nice people. No matter how much manners and gift of gab they have, that's not nice. And we're so trained to be politically correct. Your past mistakes does not define your future. You've learned the Bible lesson. You'll never make that mistake ever again. It was costly, yes, but the wisdom you gain is, I feel that in my chest. That's the truth. It's priceless. And you know, if again, with wisdom, or I would say, because it sounds so lofty, I would say real practical again, paying attention and benefiting from the wisdom quite often means that you will walk to be okay with walking alone, because it is not in the cult, it's not popular. It's like almost like everyone's against you, even family members. You pit it against each other, and everybody convinces you to come back. Every numerous times you wanted to leave, and it's like a big coup to convince you to come back. Part is because they want your money or your resources. If a young person, you're another womb, or you're a potential mate for the cult leader's children. But It means it's like getting up and leaving a party, right? Because you have stuff, you got to go to work, or not taking that drink or that smoke because you know it doesn't work for you, or not eating, you know, garbage thing, food, substances masquerading as food because it doesn't work for you. So, or not following along with the crowd because this person is so charismatic and it, you know, it's the next trending channel, the next trending conscious leader, because something that you pick up in a vibe is not resonating with you. Um, wow, wow, and so it's really something you it's to get used to walking alone. It doesn't necessarily mean lonely, but just to sit in it. And those who you're to move with in life, that'll come. But until we love and accept and have respect, to have it takes a lot of respect for yourself to walk away from something, from a relationship you feel is the last relationship, you feel like this is your last ticket out, you know, your last ticket out of quote unquote Babylon or whatever. It takes a lot to walk away from something that you think is your dream or desire because it doesn't feel right. And so it, which is kind of like a lack. You feel like there's no other possibilities, or you don't know how something is going to happen, so we stay. You know, we settle, we stay in relationships just to say we have a relationship. People get married just to have a wedding. You know, it's just another flavor of the same energy. You can't see what's next, but you just trust. Hmm. And so I'd rather just walk by myself. I mean, I had to get up and I left, and I was like, this is not working for me. This is feeling dangerous. This is not adding up. It's too much rhetoric. I don't care how much you're showing basketball. I don't care how much raw foods. The whole community's eating raw foods, but these are human beings, flawed. You can't blame the people that are born into the cult. But this man was showing behavior that is off, and people don't know. You know, I really feel I feel bad for I don't know if the word is feel bad, but I feel bad for some young Belizeans and young people that are unaware because they're just looking for something else. You know, you're looking for someone to trust. And when you're at a certain age, you know, they're not thinking, they think it's nothing wrong with wanting to trust adults. You know, because if they feel like they can't trust anything, that doesn't feel good as a young person. So that's not wrong. But unfortunately, we are in a climate, in a time where young people are only going to learn discernment a lot, quite often they're getting their butt kicked by some serious life lessons. You know, it's like folks out here today can get diseases and they keeps right on trucking because of low esteem, feeling like, you know, their world is over. But these are hard ways to get lessons. So when your money's wiped out, or you got a disease, or you have children, I mean, and it's not everything we can shield everyone that you can shield everyone from. So I'm gonna keep going and keep growing, right? Because yeah, life is far from over, and I give thanks. I encourage everybody to grow something in the garden. Grow something. You don't have to be in the tropics. Work with what you got from where you are. There are benefits in every environment that you're in. And this channel is not one. You know, I get the anger, and I at some point I just really couldn't believe that there were women that would turn a blind eye to stuff. But listen, there are. Those are human beings. I really couldn't believe that there are women that would turn a blind eye to certain kinds of manipulation, and mental abuse, or just that the grooming of other young people. I couldn't wrap my mind around it, but it exists. So the romanticism is not it's not cutting it. It's not serving us to be romantic about these ideas. This is the one. This is the one. You know, if look in the mirror, because if we are the quote unquote most high, then you're no different. You know, what the source, whatever you want to call it, came from, gave you common sense. You know, and quite often we're not using it. We see red flags, and we ignore the red flags because we don't want to be alone, or you don't want to go do something on your own or by yourself. So hopefully this can say, just give somebody something on their radar to look for. I'm no savior. I don't have anything for anybody to join. Um, you know, I'm just a simple person, just sharing my insights. So hopefully people can see some patterns. It's not everything that you need to go through, young people, and come out severely, or just women and people in general, even young men, that you have to go through and get damaged before you learn the lesson. Some of us don't have as much wiggle room for more damage, because certain things, decisions you make will stay with you for a lifetime. children, diseases, losing savings that you worked so hard for, relationships. You know, that's a lot. That's a lot. So I'm grateful for even the challenge. Life, it has challenges. That's just life. Life has challenges. So I'm gonna do the best of any environment I'm in. If I'm in the tropics, if I'm in the cold, just put on more layers, get some grow lights, grow in the house if you need to. Everybody can grow something. Work with what you have available to you. Because that is good safeguard from somebody trying to run some rhetoric and game on you, because you're handling yourself responsibly. You have respect for yourself, and you're responsible with your genitals, with your money, with your time, and it's not so open. And yeah, they probably don't want you if you're a person that thinks for yourself, and if you ask questions, speak out for yourself, you won't be deemed as desirable, and that's okay. It may cause some mistakes and bad decisions. But when I return back, yeah, it's like, oof, you said it. Also, I'm telling you, in terms of understanding psychology, again, for young people out there, in the times when this is not just cult leaders, this is societal. Your vices will be used to turn you out. If you're a glutton, um, if you are so preoccupied with sex, because everything is like it's nothing to open your body up to energy. This is males and females. You can be twisted out. A cult leader would turn you out with sex, with all of them, whether it's their daughters or people in the community. This is prevalent in all cults, with the promise of a mate or somebody that loves you. All this. You can be turned out on your vices. If you're greedy for not just greedy for attention, but also thirsty for attention. This is males and females. If you don't feel secure in yourself, if you're not okay with being on your own until whatever your time comes, if you allow someone to fearmonger you, it can leave you wide open to be manipulated. And what's so interesting? The co-leader is saying everything that you're saying. Spiritual warfare, all this stuff is said all the time. It's one of the patterns I noticed. It's the context. It's the context. Whoever the political leader, the cult leader, they are in control of the context of the words, and you can really shift the context of the words. There's each cult has their own language and their own patterns. And I had read many of the books that were out of print of this particular cult leader, so I could also notice that I'm a mother. I noticed patterns. I can notice the patterns of his language changed in some of the books. So those would be books that the newcomers on the scene wouldn't be privy to. So just so much to just pay attention to and be okay with being comfortable in your skin. I'm not here to tell any grown folks what to do, but the more comfortable you are with working honorably from where you are with your honorable economics, having a commitment and a responsibility to taking care of your body and your mind and appreciating your own hair and skin, being responsible with your economics. All of these things, simple things, can keep you from being lured into a cult, right? Because if you feel broken, if you have a narrative that you're broken and you didn't have your parents, these narratives leave you wide open. So it's really for us to write a new narrative, even with our quote unquote experience with slavery. That's not all of who we are. If you ever lived in the ghetto, that's one experience, a chapter in your book. It's not all of who you are. It's up to us to be responsible and respectful enough to ourselves. Write a new narrative. It's like, this man, he didn't make me, so he couldn't break me. He couldn't. I was affected, but he didn't make me. He didn't break me. And there are many things I didn't know in ignorance. Okay, so now I know better. The thing is to understand and to sit quietly and to observe. How did I allow myself to be vulnerable without beating up on myself so I can learn? If you don't learn the lessons, then we're likely to repeat the same thing with a different face, or with a new cult, or even a cult thing in a personal relationship. So I don't want to ramble on and on and on. It's getting dark and mosquitoes are out, and I got to quickly water because it is very, very warm and hot here, and I give thanks for the heat. So just pay attention, because we're looking at things that we want to see, and we're romanticizing a lot of things because they're black or they have locks or natural hair, and it's not enough. And we're in a time where we're overlooking people's character because they have money or they have looks or they have gift of gab, and we're not paying attention to character and prioritizing our own character. And when you prioritize that for yourself, then you'll have enough wherewithal to walk away from situations because they're not right for you. It just doesn't feel right, and so you can walk away. hmm Yeah. So that's enough. Everyone, excuses and rationalizations in your brain. Be aware if somebody's answering your questions with rhetoric and trying to deflect you. And just because somebody shows you natural hair, fruits and vegetables, basketball and stuff, that does not mean that they're not deviant. People are not just going to come out and tell you all the stuff they're doing in the dark. By the time they tell you, you might be in a situation and pressured by all the people that are around to stay in it. And it's no joke. It's not hard to program human beings because we all have our vulnerable spots. So if anyone would care to download any of these videos, because technically this channel is deleted, because they moved to have this channel deleted from the speaking out and speaking my truth. I'm just sharing my experience. So feel free, if anybody would care to in the States with good high-speed internet, to download any of these videos and put them for safekeeping in a safe space. I really feel for the young adults who in their 19, 20s, they still have questions. A lot of them still unsure. Some people in their 40s are still unsure which way to go. And I don't think that's something we should make people feel ashamed for. But if we make decisions, even in ignorance, certain outcomes, we're still going to have to deal with them. So again, babies that we hadn't planned for, diseases, savings being wiped out, years going down the drain, we'll still have to live with the consequences, whether we're nice people or not. Yeah. So we definitely are not broken. Right, it's been a woman. Listen. Well, much appreciation. Much appreciation. Again, share this video with someone that may find value, particularly a young person, but not exclusive to young people, because there are a lot of people that are looking for something, and a lot of us have traded off the church for something else. And it's really become apparent, it's just new lessons every day, that many of us will willingly give over our ability to make decisions for ourselves because we just don't want to think. A lot of us just don't want to deal. A lot of us just don't want to deal. We'll say, the inner narrative is just too hard. It's too hard to be a black man. It's too hard to be a black woman. It's too hard to be alone, And that's something to be very wary of. Some of us will willingly give our decision-making responsibility over to other folks because it seems like it's easier. But we're not banking on the true cost, so we're not aware. We're in ignorance to what the true cost of that is going to be down the line. And for example, I've seen women that look like they're broken down. So it doesn't mean that we don't all have challenges out here, but I'm okay with being responsible for my own life. All right, folks. So you take care. Be safe. Keep your thinking cap on. Don't pretend you're not seeing what it is that you're seeing. Okay, take care.